Stepping Up to the Plate on BCTV is presented by Smoker & Company and One Source Business Solutions.
Hello again, everyone. This is Missy Lamm, and welcome back to Stepping Up to the Plate on BCTV. Tonight's show is very special to our organization because it marks the 4th anniversary of our organization's rebranding from Berkshire Baseball and Softball to Big Vision Foundation, which took place on January 24th, 2014. Tonight I'm joined by our organization's president and founder, Dan Clouser, who will give us some of the history of the organization. Dan, thanks for joining me tonight.
Thanks for having me, Missy.
Absolutely. So before we get into talking about the rebrand, can you give us a little bit of a background as to what made you originally decide to start up with the club in 1989?
Sure. I mean, really it was just a bunch of guys who wanted to keep playing baseball.
Okay.
I didn't have the opportunity to play in college because I went to a trade school. Originally I was going to be a record producer. That didn't quite work out the way I'd planned.
Nice. Very nice.
But, so I wanted to keep playing baseball. A bunch of my buddies from high school wanted to keep playing baseball. And, that's really what it was all about. A bunch of, my high school teammates and guys we played against. And we decided to start, what was then the Springlawn Optimist Baseball League. And the Berkshire Red Sox were one of the teams in the Springlawn Optimist Baseball League. So that's kind of how it all got started.
Okay. Very cool. So when did the organization run its first tournament then?
So we actually ran it the first year that we had organized.
Okay.
So we organized in '89. Our first season was in 1990. And we ran a little small 4-team tournament at Fleetwood High School. And, kind of built it up from there till, now we're running 30 tournaments every weekend from April to the beginning of November.
Yeah, that's a big improvement.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what really program?
So yeah, our first 10 years of existence, it was just an adult baseball organization.
Sure.
A couple years into it, we added our 28 and over team. There was an over 30 team at that point.
Okay.
So we had 2 teams that were playing. And then in 1999, a bunch of us at that point had gotten involved in coaching.
Okay.
I was coaching at Conrad Weiser Legion. Another one of our players was coaching at Exeter. One was coaching at Muhlenberg. Had a friend of ours coaching down at Boyertown. And, we were always coaching against each other, but still playing with each other.
Right.
So we had an opportunity to put a team in what was then called the Mid-Atlantic Baseball Coaches Alliance Showcase, which was held out at Franklin Marshall College.
Right.
So we got together and we were like, hey, this was kind of like more of like a fall Carpenter Cup type of event. And, so we were all coaching Legion baseball, so we had contacts for all the kids and, in Legion baseball, and we decided to run a tryout and put a team together to put into this tournament at Franklin Marshall. And, that's what we did. We held a couple tryouts, put together a really good team. I mean, really, till this day, probably still the best team we ever put on the field.
Yeah.
We had 7 players who went on to play Division I college baseball off that team, 5 players who went on to play professionally.
Yeah,
and,
it
was really neat to see how those kids from, and I think we had 10 or 11 different school districts that were represented on that team, and how we kind of saw those kids come together as, what were fierce competitors over the summer, to really using the game to kind of get past that and understand that they had something in common, which was a love of baseball. And,
Sure.
So we had a lot of fun, but we also saw, that it was really bigger than just the game. Unfortunately, one of our players, a week after the tournament, was paralyzed in a car accident. And the number of players on that team, that really played, 4 games together and practiced probably half a dozen times, how closely knit they become. And, the number of the kids on that team that went down to Bryn Mawr to see Chase in a rehab center down there, touched us all. So, at that point, our coaching staff was kind of like, why, let's look at doing this throughout an entire fall season as opposed to just, one weekend, so to speak.
Right.
And then we, the following year, that's what we did. We did a full fall season and, kind of got the same response from the kids from the different school districts. So it was really more, than just playing baseball. It was more about, kind of the social aspect of it.
Right. Absolutely. So I know you touched a little bit about it, you hinted it, but when did you actually realize that what what you were doing was more than just playing baseball and softball?
So I think, that first team was in '99, and as we kind of grew the youth side of it, and we would see the number of kids that from different school districts really became to build bonds and friendships. It was one of the times I think it really started to resonate with us that it was more than just about playing the game and more than about wins and losses. It was really about kind of a bigger purpose of we've got kids from that first team that are still best of friends today.
Sure.
And I think that's really when it kind of resonated that it again was more about wins and losses and more about just playing. It was kind of seeing the social aspect of kids from different school districts getting together. I mean, you and I witnessed it the other night over at Ozzy's where Schuylkill Valley kid and a couple kids from Blue Mountain getting together in the off season,
right,
which would never happen without organization.
Absolutely. Yeah, they wouldn't even know who each other were.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So why did the organization decide to manage and maintain the complex for the County of Berks?
So that opportunity presented itself to us. First started talking about it around late 2010, early 2011, mm-hmm. and as our the tournament piece of our organization started to grow, the old county fields that they were called at the time was one of the facilities we were using. Mm-hmm. The county kind of saw the pride that we took in maintaining the facility during a tournament weekend. Right. Really at that time we were just a renter of the facility. So what we did during a tournament weekend, was a lot more than what any other renter would do as far as keeping the fields maintained and stuff like that. We would help the county out with that. Right. And the county was in another management agreement at the time, and that agreement was coming to an end. And we originally made a proposal to the county about really just taking over the baseball and softball piece of the fields, mm-hmm. And not really worrying about the multi-purpose fields. Right. And the county's counter proposal to us was, why don't you guys take the whole place over? So yeah. It was a bit of a game changer for us at that right. point because, up until then we were really, pretty much 100% volunteer organization for the most part. Sure. At that stage of the game, I was now, being paid to run the organization. We had a part-time administrative assistant, but we still weren't in a position where we could really manage, 100+ acre complex. Right. But by the same token, we saw it as an incredible opportunity, to really come in and create a destination. Absolutely. Bring, as opposed to having teams come in and play at Daniel Boone High School and Wimmelsdorf and all over the county, come into one centralized location and park your car and play and go home. Yeah. So we started a strategic plan at that point to look at doing some renovations to again make it more of a destination, and decided to go ahead and manage it and maintain it for the county, which saves taxpayers $150,000 a year, and
it's not too shabby.
Yeah, we've put in upwards of $1 million in improvements into the facility at this point with our Green Monster replica and all kinds of other stuff, and right. again have really made it a destination at this point.
Yeah, that's awesome. It is. So why did you feel that it was necessary for the rebrand?
So like I said, originally our proposal to the county was just for the baseball and softball side because that's what we do. Sure. So throughout our strategic planning process, we knew we had just inherited 4 soccer fields, 4 multi-purpose fields. Right. So we knew in the grand scheme of things, in order to really sustain the complex and keep moving forward and creating a youth sports destination, at some point in the future we would have to start running some other events outside of just baseball and softball events. Right. So we didn't think that the Berkshire Baseball Soccer Classic had a really great ring to it. So, throughout our strategic plan, mm-hmm. we decided that we were now more than just a baseball and softball organization. We were now a youth sports organization. Right.
Yeah, and I think that's great. Really just to see from the beginning of just starting out with you and your friends to building to baseball, then to adding softball, and then obtaining that complex, and then even broadening your perspective and broadening the organization. I think that's great. Can you walk us through the rebranding process a little bit?
Having a staff meeting, and our chairman of the board was there, and he kept saying, guys, I hope you really understand how big this is going to be. Taking over this complex is really going to be big. This is going to be so big. I hope you guys understand it. And he just kept saying that over and over again. This is going to be big. This is going to be big. So I, the next day, I took this guy here for a walk, and that's a lot of times when I'm doing my own brainstorming.
Right.
And I just kept playing over and over in my head what Jerry was saying about this is going to be big, this is going to be big, this is going to be big. And, at some point, I was thinking of, well, maybe big itself could be the acronym.
Sure.
But where would we go from there? So, initially I was thinking, well, maybe we call ourselves the Big Picture Foundation, because everybody always talks about, hey, you got to look at the big picture.
Right.
But then, the one thing that kind of hit me as I'm processing that throughout my walk is, the thing with a picture is it never changes. So there's a big picture behind us. It's been on my wall for, over 10 years now, and it's the same picture that it ever was. I mean,
right.
Yeah, it's big, but it never changes.
Sure.
So at the same time, I was doing a lot of studying and research on Steve Jobs, and he would talk about having a vision and that sort of stuff. So that's where I kind of landed on Big Vision Foundation, because a vision is constantly changing, and it's something that you can create, and you can paint, and you can orchestrate it.
Absolutely.
So I kind of landed on, all right, Big Vision Foundation, but now what would the BIG and big stand for?
Sure.
So the B was relatively easy, because I figured, well, we can just resort back to the B stands for Berkshire.
Right.
Not really broadcast it, but those of us that are intimately involved would know that Berkshire is still the heart and soul of the organization.
Absolutely.
And the I was relatively easy as well, because again, resorting back to Steve Jobs and talking about innovation and being innovative and that sort of stuff, the I stood for innovative. And I bounced around with a couple different things that the G would stand for initially. And when I got back to the house here, I'd called my wife down, and I'm like, Sandy, I got it. This is what it's going to be. So I started walking her through the concept, and I'm like, Big Vision Foundation, BIG's going to be an acronym, Berkshire, innovative. And again, I can't even remember anymore what my initial G was.
Yeah.
But when I get to the G right away, she said, growth. And I said, well, it is now.
Yeah.
And we later basically made it growth in the community.
Yeah.
So Berkshire, innovative, growth in the community is what the BIG and Big Vision Foundation stands for. So we immediately called Jerry on the phone and walked it through with him, and he loved it, bought into it right away.
Right.
And that's really how the name changed from just Berkshire Baseball and Softball Club to Big Vision Foundation. And that's why we always have the BIG capitalized in Big Vision Foundation.
Yeah, and I think that's something that's subtle that not everyone always picks up on.
Right, and if you actually look at our logo, the bar that goes across our logo, there's two little diamonds on either side of it, which are, branding company, Crossroads Branding, put in there to, again, represent baseball and softball, and again, very subtle, but those are the diamonds that were initially the heart and soul of the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's neat to still kind of want to grow the foundation, the organization, but to still hold true to what started it all.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and you touched on it a little bit, but why did you feel that it was really important? What was the significance of keeping Berkshire Baseball and Softball brand alive throughout that whole process?
So, again, one of the things Al and I talked about a lot was really throughout the strategic process, it was really to create an organization within an organization. And in any normal case, and God knows we've never done anything normal or easy, you would create from Berkshire Baseball a subsidiary below that,
Right.
where we actually created a parent company, so to speak, above Berkshire Baseball.
Sure.
So it was important to us to, keep the Berkshire Baseball and Softball brand alive, as our teams. So, Big Vision Foundation ran the complex, Big Vision Foundation took care of all the operations, but our youth teams would still play under the Berkshire Baseball and Softball banner.
Gotcha. Now that makes a lot of sense, just to still keep that name with it.
Right.
Yeah. So with it being a new year and a new season coming up, do you have any new programs set out for the Berkshire Baseball and Softball division?
Yeah, so this year we're kicking off what we're calling our Work Hard, Play Hard program.
Okay.
And what we're doing there is we're eliminating the registration fees for our teams. So, like any other travel baseball or softball organization, historically we've had, player registration fees that, could get pretty high, due to the costs that are involved. I mean, unfortunately, it costs a lot of money to go out and play in a bunch of tournaments and travel around and, pay for umpires and baseballs and softballs and all that sort of stuff.
Right.
So, this year we decided to eliminate those fees, and in lieu of that, we're asking each of the kids in our program to give the organization back community service, and that goes on a sliding scale. And again, a lot of that stems from you read about just with what we do at the complex, that we're part of a $13 billion youth sports industry.
Right.
However, the flip side of that is that even with all that money being spent and all these teams traveling and going to tournaments, youth sports participation is actually on the decline. And, a lot of that is basically because we've now turned it into an economic, avenue for people.
Yeah.
So, back in the days when I grew up and, even before that, I mean, sports is one of the few areas throughout our society where you literally failed or succeeded strictly based on your talents. Had nothing to do with the color of your skin or your economic background or anything like that. If you were good, and you excelled.
Right.
And, over the past couple of years, we've changed that where, there's, unless you're part of a, pretty affluent family that's probably making six figures, it's difficult to afford, putting a kid into a travel tournament team. You read about some parents who are literally spending $25,000 to $30,000 a year to have their kids participate in youth sports.
Wow.
And the more research I did on that, the more I realized, we wanted to kind of change that culture, so to speak.
Yeah.
And the flip side of that is obviously at Complex, and we've got plenty of things to do and plenty of things that we can use help with.
Absolutely.
So, there is a benefit to us as an organization to pick up, 1,500 or 2,000, community service volunteer hours, whether it's the kid coming out and helping on a tournament weekend, whether it's coming out on a Tuesday afternoon in July and helping rake a field or pull weeds or paint something.
Sure.
There's definitely a benefit for us, and I think at that point it gives those kids a little bit more ownership in the program as well and kind of appreciate what they're doing a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, you were touching a little bit on it, but why do you feel that it's so important to really stress the community service part of the program?
Well, I think, that's a thing that, again, in our day and age now is, is really on the decline. Volunteerism and just giving back in general. We've gotten to a point in our society where, it's easier for parents to write a check than it is to help in a concession stand or something like that.
Right.
And I think, just looking at my own background, my own childhood, as I was a young person growing up, my mother volunteered with just about anything and everything she could. And, part of being her son was being drug along to these things. So I didn't really have a choice. If we were doing Meals on Wheels, I was in the back seat with her, or whatever the case was. If she, and she was actually integral in starting the Ole Valley Youth League. So again, my first year of Little League, if I had a game at the complex at 11 o'clock, for me to get there at 7 o'clock in the morning because she was opening up the concession stand wasn't uncommon whatsoever.
Right.
and then for me to play my game and then stick around for another 4 hours till she was done in the stand or doing whatever it was she was doing, again, that was just what it was. So as I became a young adult and growing up, it was just second nature for me to want to get involved in other organizations.
Sure.
And I think that's something that, we as an organization can stress and, have that instilled in our kids that, again, as they become young adults and get into society, that it's just second nature for them to want to get involved and help out in the community. I think that's very important.
Yeah, because I think you said that before, you touched on it. It's something that is very uncommon, I think, nowadays, for someone to truly want to just help out rather than there being some sort of motive behind it.
Right.
So I think that's great with the new program
Yeah,
that you're rolling out.
Just to add to that, as you know, we do an event which has nothing to do with baseball or softball in the winter, called Cups Compassion, where we go out and help feed the homeless, in downtown Reading. And, we're at a stage now where we've got kids who are in college who are reaching out to me as Cups Compassion approaches, saying, hey, Coach, what's the day of Cups Compassion? Can I get involved? So to see a kid that's in his sophomore, junior year of college reach out and, want to get up at 6 or 6:30 in the morning during his college break and come out in the cold weather and, help us feed the homeless is pretty cool. And it tells us that we're doing something right.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I know that you started the Berkshire softball side back up. It was down for more than a decade, and you're bringing it back up. So why is there such an emphasis on getting the girls back into the program?
I just think, again, it's important. As you guys know, my mom's been an incredible influence on my life, and she was a strong-willed woman and could probably work circles around any man she had ever met. And I've got 3 daughters of my own, and 4 granddaughters. So, it really, I would never tell any of my daughters or granddaughters that they couldn't do something simply because they were a female. I think that's ridiculous. And like I said, being my mother's son, there was nothing that my mom couldn't do that, certainly not that I ever noticed.
Right.
She's the one who actually taught me how to play baseball, how to play catch. My first catch was with my mom. So, a few years back with our soccer partner, FC Revolution, I had the opportunity to meet Allie Krieger, who was just coming off a gold medal in the World Cup for the U.S. women's national team. And her and I started talking a little bit just about, as our first year, kind of getting back into softball. And, we talked about, again, the difference between kind of how boys approach sports and how girls approach sports. And how the boys a lot of times took a lot of what was happening for granted, where the girls were really, kind of more in tune and more thankful and more grateful just for even the smallest opportunities.
Right.
And having that beautiful complex out there, it was like, well, this beautiful complex shouldn't be just for boys. It should be for boys and girls alike. So it really kind of, again, got me thinking, to open up and start creating more opportunities for girls. Also as you do some research, you look and you see that, over 90% of, current women CEOs played sports as a background, and, the benefits that, sports have on females in general as they go into life. I think, and they benefits boys as well, but I think it's just driven home even more so with girls. So, it was important for us at that point to, get the girls programs back up and striving. We were fortunate to come across yourself and Kelsey and, Ashley, who is one of our former, original Bobcats. And, it's pretty cool to kind of see the girls' side take off within the organization again.
Yeah, absolutely. So now with that new program that you rolled out, the Work Hard, Play Hard program, do you see any change that might happen within the youth organization? Do you see any effect that it might have moving forward?
I think it's going to create again, opportunities for everyone, regardless of what their, economic or ethnic background may be. And we kind of saw that a little bit last fall, where we did, kind of a pilot run, so to speak, and we've always been very involved with inner city athletics and creating opportunities for inner city kids. And we've done a lot with the Reading Titans organization. And last year going into the fall, a lot of our kids from our summer team were playing some other sports, and a lot of the Reading Titans kids were playing some other sports. So as we're entering the fall, we had 8 kids who could play, and they had 7 kids who could play. So neither one of us were putting a team on the field on our own.
Right.
So we approached them about merging the 2 teams together, and kind of seeing how that would work. And that's what we ended up doing. And again, going back to like our original Berkshire Showcase team, to kind of see how these 8 white suburban kids meshed with these 7 Latino inner city kids, and using this little white spear that we throw around as that common denominator, and being able to cut all the noise, all the background noise out as to why we're different, and why we should have different feelings for someone who's not like us, who doesn't look like us. That was all broken down by using that little white ball and saying, this is the one thing that we do have in common. And again, to see those kids mesh and come together was really rewarding at the end of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's something too that people get caught up in so many things, and when you really look at it, everything can just be simple. It's as simple as respecting one another,
Right.
Respecting the game, respecting the coaches, respecting your other teammates, and really coming together, like you said, and creating something beautiful, and enjoying a win, enjoying a championship, or even just enjoying a certain moment that happens within a game.
Right.
So I think that's great. Now, what's the future hold for Big Vision Foundation? $1 million question.
I think it's really going to be a lot of the same. We're going to continue to make a positive impact in our community. Going to continue to try to create a positive impact on more and more kids, and that's whether it's kids that are directly within our Berkshire baseball and softball program, or just a kid that's coming in from New England or Canada or New York to play in one of our tournaments, to create really the best experience that they can ever have in their life. And they leave here saying, wow, it was really cool to play on that Fenway Park replica, or those people really took care of that complex, or they really went out of their way to make us feel at home when we were at their complex for a weekend. So I really think it's a lot of the same of what we've been doing. I'd love to tell people that when we started this organization in 1989, that there was some sort of big vision back then as to what it would evolve to, but that wasn't the case. I mean, it's all it's constantly evolving, it's constantly changing, and we've been fortunate to really come across some great people who've bought into what we're doing as an organization.
Sure.
And I think if we keep doing the right things, more and more of those type of people will cross our paths, and we'll be able to again, just create a greater positive impact on a greater number of people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think from where you're starting at and the ideas that you have behind it, it'll go exactly where you want to go with the organization. Absolutely. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with the folks?
I think I said quite a bit already.
Yeah.
So.
Yes. Well, thank you very much for joining us tonight in celebrating our 4th anniversary of the rebranding. Check us out come spring season. Come out to the complex, check us out, and let us know if you have any thoughts or anything like that. Go to bigvisionfoundation.org. All right. Thank you so much, folks. Have a good night.